Hey, what's up? Very excited for this reading vlog in particular because I love doing themed reading vlogs, and also I have a sneaky suspicion that I'm gonna find potentially a 5-star read in this week's selection. If you are new here, I have been doing an around the world reading challenge for the past few years. I think 2 or 3 years now. I started 3 years ago, where I try to read a book from every single country in the world. I have a whole playlist on my channel if you want to check out my progress, my recommendations, what countries I've read from. And this year in 2024, I decided to invite you along for the ride. I created a book club on Fable called the World Tour Book Club, where we read from around the world, a different country every single month. What ended up happening was that the picks that I chose for you guys to vote on in March were sounding so good when I was doing my research that I actually bought all of them before I even put the poll out, and I want to read them all. In this reading vlog, we're going to be reading books from different African countries. I'm very excited. One of the countries I've already read from. For the book club in March, we are reading Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dengaremga. This is from Zimbabwe. I have read from Zimbabwe before, but these other countries in this reading vlog, no. Get to finish this one up. This was the only one that I had previously on my shelves, and then I'll get to read some new countries so that I can add some more countries to my own challenge and read some more books. So I cannot express to you how much I love this around the world thing. I am 10,000% not the person who started this. I got this idea from someone else, and there are so many people out there doing this challenge. I believe there is a whole website about it. If I can find it, I'll link it. This is my own personal little travel diary of reads from around the world. So first up in this video, I'm going to be finishing off Nervous Conditions. Really good. I heard about this book in university in a post-colonial lit class I was taking. Picked it up, and I'm currently a little over halfway through. Really enjoying this. Really enjoying this. So I'll just tell you a little bit about it. So in Nervous Conditions, I should also say I'm really sorry if you can hear like running water. We're having like flooding problems in the house. Nervous Conditions follows this young girl named Tambu, who is 13 years old when the novel opens. The first sentence of this novel, Chapter 1, I was not sorry when my brother died. Nor am I apologizing for my callousness, as you may define it, my lack of feeling. This is a first-person narrative. I don't typically gravitate towards coming-of-age, introspective, coming-of-age stories too often, but when I do, I get so in the mood for them. There's a very satisfying quality about it all, watching someone grow and learn and mature and go through life, and that's exactly what Nervous Conditions is about. It is a look at Tampu's journey into education. I know this is a series, so I believe more than that it is going to be just a general journey exploring girlhood. When this book opens, I believe it's 1968, and Tambu is not very well off. She lives with her mother, her father, her 2 sisters, I think, and her brother, who, as we learn, dies at some point. It's a little bit of a mystery. It gets its hooks into you. You kind of want to know what happens to him. And their family has this uncle who is kind of regarded as the deity of the family because he has made a name for himself. He's become very well off. He's gone to England. He knows how to speak English, and he has returned to Zimbabwe to work at and help lead this missionary school that is a little bit outside of where Tambu lives. She wants so much to get an education. She wants so much to learn. Tambu's uncle, whose name is Baba Makuru, he comes back from England. He went there with his wife and their 2 children. Tambu's cousin Nyasha, who does go to England. Fascinating character, such a fascinating character to follow. But yeah, so basically we follow Tambu from a young age as she recounts her memories. It's clear that she is now from a place narrating many years later, looking back, and so it's deeply introspective. We slowly peel back the layers of everyone and everything because we're getting a very filtered view of her world through her eyes when she is very young, and she maybe doesn't have the same understanding or maturity to see what is really going on in certain situations. And so all of these characters grow along with you, and as the reader you start to discover a ton of aspects about who they really are. The main thing I keep thinking, and it's something I can't put my finger on, but it happens when I read, for example, someone like Hemingway, I'm finding this so addictive and so satisfying. I don't know if it's her writing style. It's very much like a deep, intimate look into all of her thoughts, feelings before and after, like tons of events, because Tambu eventually does get to go to school, even though it was never really technically meant for her as a girl, especially not the oldest child. So it's just so satisfying to read. It's so addictive. I'm finding that I'm flying through this actually. Also, this copy just smells so good. We are kind of seeing how Tambu throughout her education is obviously becoming more and more alienated from her family. She doesn't really want to see them too much. She has entered this whole new way of living, a clash that they kind of come into, definitely in terms of like traditions and values. Her cousin Nyasha is a great example of this because she's lived and spent time in England, and she's come back and she's dissatisfied with a lot of values that her family upholds. Of course, so much discussion about should Tambu even really be getting this education. Her father is like, can you cook books and feed them to your husband? 128 pages through, I think I'm on chapter 7. I am just really liking it, and I think I will definitely be continuing on with this series. So that is the first book I'll be reading for this reading vlog in this episode. I finished Nervous Conditions. So good. This was so good. So good. This copy smells so good. It smells so good. The cats, Kelsper is just giving Grendel a little bath. Oh, and more. This is kind of a quiet book in terms of the education angle that I was talking about, because we have everything from the point of view of Tambu as she's older, right? So narrating the story, she's much older than I think the 13, 14, turning maybe 15 she is at the time. She starts to go to the mission school, and there I think the most important and the most just wowing aspect of the novel was her relationship with her cousin Nyasha, who is her uncle's daughter, the uncle who runs the school, who's given her this opportunity. Their relationship was just like everything. I think it's so beautiful, it's so complex, it's so real, it's so wonderfully on page. Nyasha was my favorite character. There's so much that she goes through in this book, and so much of this book is like you read it and then you get to the end kind of and you're like, oh my god. I think it's such a wonderful character study because it's so real, the way that everything is from the point of view of Tambu, because you get everything filtered through her perspective. And so insidious the way that education works in here, because it kind of starts to take over her life. And the thing with Nyasha too, and that they're constantly just like ping-ponging off of each other. Like her whole life is being taken up by this westernized education, and she can't stop reading books. She's studying obsessively. She wants to be the best. She's kind of losing touch with other things in her life. I think this book kind of meanders along at a very readable pace though at the same time, because this was so addictive for me to read. But then you get kind of to the end of the book and it just amps up. There's so much pressure, there's so much tension, there's so many expectations on Tambu now from her family side back home, but also from her uncle and from the teachers at the school, because things begin to happen. She does extremely well at school, so there's consequences for that. Just honestly masterfully crafted. She's caught between the opportunities that education is giving her, being able to work and get a job and earn money for her family. Then she's also expected on the other side to just provide a family and to very much fulfill the role of the woman in this time period. It's just so good. It's so good. I'm so glad I read this. So many people loved it in the book club as well, and I will definitely be continuing on with the series. Just need to find the next one. I did start the next book for this vlog and I'm also loving it, and that is Tram 83. Oh, so good. So good. This author is from the DRC, and while Tram 83 isn't technically set in the Congo because it is a fictional city, the back says that it is pretty much a given that it's set in Lubumbashi, which is one of the southern cities of the Congo, I believe, and that's where a lot of mining takes place. The book features a ton of mines in the city, and a ton of cobalt is mined in the DRC, and that's a lot what this book focuses on. But can I just say that stylistically, Tram 83 is one of the coolest, gnarliest books I've ever read. Frenetic writing style like that of a jazz musician. Totally see where that's coming from. There's so many voices and refrains and patterns coming in and out in the writing. He's just incredibly talented. So the story is that we have two men who are friends, but they're honestly very antagonistic towards each other. We have Requiem, who lives in the city, and he is trying to profit off of all of the corruption, profit off of stuff happening with the mines, and just trying to be like king king of the shady underworld. We then have his friend Lucian, who comes into the city, which is a city-state from a little bit far away, like he's returned, and he is a writer. He's very much the poet, and he is a little bit of an idealist as well, and it's clear that he's not really a big fan of anything that Requiem is doing or the state of things. Everyone really looks down upon him, and they don't really want him there reciting his literature, prose, poetry, and so there is a lot of tension between the two. It's called Tram 83 because honestly, almost every single day, every single scene is set in Tram 83, which is a club, a bar, a nightclub, that type of joint, where everyone goes, like every single person goes. It's always bumping. It's always alive with something, with so many different kinds of music as well. There's the addition of so many different kinds of music in here, which I love, especially when the author like tells you exactly what song is playing in what scene. I adore that. Love that in Murakami. It happens in here as well. And so they meet at the tram every single night. This book though, to get back to the writing style, so good. Okay, it's just like a musical score, and it's wonderful because so many refrains and patterns come back, like I said, so many voices inserted. Everything is it's just so much. It's just overstimulation to the extreme. This is just a wonderful sentence. Inadvertent musicians and elderly prostitutes and prestidigitators and Pentecostal preachers and students resembling mechanics and doctors conducting diagnoses in nightclubs and young journalists already retired and second-foot shoe peddlers and porn film fans and highwaymen and pimps and disbarred lawyers and casual laborers and polka dancers and pirates of the high seas and seekers of political asylum and organized fraudsters and archaeologists and would-be bounty hunters and modern-day inventors and explorers searching for a lost civilization and human organ dealers and farmyard philosophers and hawkers of fresh water and hairdressers and shoe shine boys and repairers of spare parts and soldiers' widows and sex maniacs and lovers of romance novels and dissident rebels and brothers in Christ and druids and shamans and aphrodisiac vendors and scriveners and purveyors of real fake passports and gun runners and porters and bric-a-brac traders. It just goes on and on. It just goes on and on, talking about just like who frequents Tram 83, and so much of it is about the sale of goods and services. In this city-state, there are students. There's a group of students who are going to university, and the train. The train is kind of the huge thing that links everyone, because so much of this is set near a train station. Like everything is near a train station. That's where Tram 83 is too. So we have the students who take the trains. We have the miners who work in the mines. They're taking the trains, and these two groups don't like each other. They're always fighting each other. And then we also have rebels fighting against the general, who has control of, I think, all of the mines, and a lot of the times he will just like close them down and open them to like only foreigners and tourists. Because of the mines, so many for-profit tourists are there, as the book calls them, and like so many other foreigners coming to the city to profit from the mines. But the general who ruled supreme over the city-state, he sold off the mining concessions, or sometimes even gave them as gifts to whomever he liked. He closed and opened Hope Mine as he saw fit, even though the whole of the city-state scrounged a living off this mine. At each closure, an indescribable crisis struck the country for the enjoyment of a minority of tourists authorized to excavate at any time. There are cities which don't need literature. They are literature. I am about 114 pages through. I'm kind of just falling in love with this every time I pick it back up. It's compared here to Satan Tango, Fitzcarraldo, and Part Blood Meridian. This one calls it a modern twisted Great Gatsby. I think literally right now I'm gonna go sit down and I guess finish this, although I don't really want it to be over. So that is Tram 83. Just this vlog is going so well. I'm here to update you on the fact that I have started The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born by Aikwe Arma. This is probably the heaviest book so far in this reading vlog for sure. Most unflinching, painful books that I've read so far this year. Despair, like just complete hopelessness, but a hopelessness that you've fallen into after so much expectation, so much hope, so much fervor, so much joy, so much celebration. And now in here, a lot of people, along with our narrator, have reached the point of just like total despair. This book is set in Ghana in the mid 1960s, at the time when it was the final years of the president of Ghana at the time, Nkrumah. I just feel like as well, over the years when I've been doing this Reading Around the World challenge, I just learned so much. I just get so much knowledge that I had previously no knowledge of at all. So Ghana was one of, if not, I think it was actually the first, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I read that yesterday or something. It was the first country in Africa to gain independence back from colonial rule in 1957. So this book takes place almost 10 years after the country has gained independence. Everyone was like, yes, this is amazing, so excited for this. And now it is almost 10 years later. We are now in pretty much a dictatorship, because Nkrumah, yes, he was the one that led them into independence, but then this book chronicles the absolute fall and, like I said, despair of all of this promise, hope, liberation, because he becomes a dictator himself who has to be overthrown. It's so good, but it is so much. It is very, 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 very extremely weighty. I was talking about the political landscape before, how the leader has become a dictator. This has pretty much kept so many people, including our narrator, in extreme poverty. It has also resulted in a ton of corruption, because now only a few higher up people are keeping all of the wealth and just everything, all of the good stuff, right? So our narrator, who is not named, he's just known as the man, he has a wife and 2 kids, I think, and he lives very, very poorly. His whole society is extremely corrupt, and that is kind of the only way that we see that anyone can get ahead. It's not that they can even get ahead, but it's just the norm. The norm is corruption, the norm is bribery, cheating, lying, tricking, and the man is one of the only people that we see, aside from him and like one of his only friends, who does not want to engage in this at all. Like, he holds himself very morally upright, and he will not play the game. And because he won't play the game of his society, which, like I said, is just bribery, tricks, trading, breaking the law, pretty much that's just the norm for people to get by, he misses out on so many opportunities. He doesn't get ahead. His wife is extremely upset with him. He works as a railroad clerk, and when someone comes in trying to bribe him, he refuses. And this just like blows apart so many people's worlds, because they're like, why won't you just take the bribe? Like, that would be getting you ahead. That would be getting you a ton of money that your family could use. And he's like, no, like, I'm not gonna take a bribe. That's wrong. But there is no sense of right or wrong anymore in a society when everyone is just trying to do anything that they can to literally just survive. So it creates this humongous internal conflict, and more than that, like I said, just despair. This is not a happy book by any means. This is like a soul-crushing book. There have been so many lines, and so much of this book focuses in, sometimes very minutely, on details and objects. For example, the banister of the railways offices, what's it called? Stairwell that he goes up and down every day to work, how the wood is just petrifying, putrefying, the way that everything smells, everyone's bodily functions. Like, it's very much a novel of complete abjection and just distress. It's a hard read. And it did take me a while to get into this, honestly, before I kind of fell into the rhythm of it. I'm 126 pages in now. It's not a long novel, but I can wholeheartedly tell you, at the point I am now, loving this. So good, just like a gut punch. It's compared a lot to Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, which I have read. Love that book. Can see the comparisons. We also follow this theme wherein everything tends towards decay, entropy. Some went very quietly into a silence no one could hope to penetrate. Something so deep that it swallowed completely men who had before been strong. They just plunged into this deep silence and died. Those who were able picked up the pieces of shattered worlds and selves, swallowed all the keen knowledge of betrayal, and came with us along the wharves to search for some humiliating work that could give meaning to the continuing passage of unwelcome days. 100 or so men, waiting with eyes that had gotten lost in the past or in the future, always in some faraway place in time, any faraway place in time, provided it was not the horrible here and now. 100 men waiting too quietly to fill places enough for 7. And the thing is too, is that he is seeing, I think it's an old classmate of his from school. He has gotten ahead because he's been like taking bribes, engaging in shifty dealings, and now his family has a car. His wife is very rich, and now his wife is very upset, and she's like, why can't we be like this guy, your old classmate? Like, we need to be like this. The cover is obviously very explicit with the imagery that we are now just worshiping objects, things, cars, television, records, alcohol. He sees the senselessness in it, he sees the betrayal, he sees the pain. What can people do when there remains only so much meaning in their lives, and that little meaning is running so irretrievably away with every day that goes? What can people do? We were defending ourselves against our friends as if they were animals. Another devastating piece that the author brings into the book is Plato's Cave, the allegory of Plato's Cave. This book does something a little bit different with it. Plato was walking through Athens, and he was like, yo, guess what? Can you imagine if there were a bunch of men, I think like 3 maybe, tied to the wall of a cave, like in shackles. They are facing away from the cave's entrance, so they can't see anything. They don't know what's out there. They are in the dark. But there is a fire, and it is casting the reflection of the flames and objects and whatever is dancing on the wall of the cave. And that is all these chained men are looking at, and they're like, wow, that's pretty cool. In their world, they would take that as reality, as face value. If someone unshackled themselves, got free from the chains, and then left the cave, first of all, upon leaving the cave, he would be blinded by the light. He would be blinded by daylight. He would be like, oh my God, what is going on? My eyes are hurting. Yikes. And then he would eventually become accustomed to what is outside. He would see the real world. He would see reality, what is not in the cave, and he would be like, oh my gosh, these people in the cave are in darkness. I need to bring them my light. So he would go back into the cave. With the eagerness of the first bringer, the wanderer returns into the cave and into its eternal darkness, and in there he shares what he has, the ideas and the words and the images of the light and the colors of a world outside, knowing surely that those he had left behind would certainly want the snapping of the ancient chains and the incredible first seeing of the light and the colors of the world beyond the eternal cave. But to those inside the eternal cave, he came as someone driven ill with the breaking of eternal boundaries, and the truth he sought to tell was nothing but the proof of his long delusion, and the words he had to give were the pitiful cries of a madman lost in the mazes of a mind pushed too far out and away from the everlasting way of darkness and reassuring chains. Another part of the allegory is that when the man would run back into the cave because he had gotten used to sunlight and light, running back in, he would just be in pitch blackness, and he'd be like, oh my God, I can't see you guys at all. And so the rest of the people who are still chained up would be like, well, no, the world out there is clearly dangerous because it's taken away your sight. It's actually blinded you. And they would not follow him. They would choose to remain tied to the wall of the cave. And so the author in The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born, he just uses it so devastatingly because the man is talking about the allegory with his friend. Nothing too much changes for the narrator is what he's saying in this system, even after the colonial powers have been vanquished, after they've been gone, after Ghana has gained its independence. We haven't really come out of the cave. We're still stuck here, and we're still kind of doing things the old way, except now with new people in power. The promise was so beautiful. Even those who were too young to understand it all knew that at last something good was being born. It was there. We were not deceived about that. How could such a thing turn so completely into this other thing? Could there have been no other way? The beauty was in the waking of the powerless. Is it always to be true that it is impossible to have things strong and at the same time beautiful? The famished men need not stay famished, but to gorge themselves in this heartbreaking way, consuming, utterly destroying the common promise in their greed, was that ever necessary? It's just so palpable. Like, you can feel the anguish of the main character coming off of the pages. There was something so good about the destroyed people waking up and wanting to make themselves whole again. There was so much that was heart-filling about the friendships and the hopes of the first days, so it should be easy to take the rots of the promise. It should be easy now to see there have never been people to save anybody but themselves, never in the past, never now, and there will never be any saviors if each will not save himself. I saw men tear down the veils behind which the truth had been hidden, but then the same men, when they have power in their hands at last, began to find the veils useful. They made many more. Life has not changed. incredible, unforgettable, wonderful. So I'm 126 pages in. I'm on chapter 10. I think I'm gonna finish this tonight is the goal. I also definitely spilled coffee on it, but that's okay. I recommend every single one of these novels actually, and this has just been really truly incredible. I'm starting to get really hot in the sun now. Probably should have worn sunscreen because I'm gonna burn, but incredible, so good. So I'm gonna read more of this. I'm just at the part now where I think his name is Komsun, our man's friend from school. He has arrived at our man's house because he has some kind of a promise that he's going to provide something for them or give them some new thing that's going to help them get ahead. So I think this is like all building to the crux of the novel and the choice that our narrator is going to take. If it's compared that much to Things Fall Apart, I feel like I know what's going to happen. And anyway, we shall see. I'll be back with updates. I finally finished The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. Wow. This has been one of my favorite vlogs. Do you know that? Like, genuinely, I've had this idea for a while to do reading vlogs from around the world, choosing different books from different countries to read from, and just being able to finally film one. I'm like, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I plan this? Why didn't I get this together sooner? Because I've just found amazing. All of these were 4 stars. I didn't find any 5 stars, but like these were all, like I feel like these are the kind of ones that sit and marinate, and then like a couple months later you do bump them up to 5 stars because these were just phenomenal. So I finished The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. First of all, I don't think I even told you that I finished Tram 83. I think I just jumped straight into this one, but 4 stars. Loved this. Do I have anything else to say about this? Just great. This one was honestly a difficult read. And I think knowing a lot more about the Congo like would have put it into a lot more context and would have helped me understand. But I did try to do a little bit of reading about the country while I was reading this book, so still I think got a good amount out of this, and I just really liked it. Incredibly unique. And then yeah, this one, like I said, another 4 stars. Highly recommend. It's very weighty. I'm not going to say anything about the ending because last night I only had about 50 pages ish left to get through, but the symbolism, I can't even say anything about it, but it's just the ending really stuck the landing for me, and I can see a lot why it's compared to Things Fall Apart. Not what I was thinking. What I was thinking was going to happen didn't happen, but still very similar, and just really truly enjoyed this. Like, this is a work of art, masterpieces. Honestly, they all are. So I'm gonna give you my final thoughts, and I was thinking last night, like, how do I pick a favorite? I think I'm just gonna talk about them in terms of different things if you're looking for a recommendation, if you're wondering which one would be the best to pick up for you if you're interested. So Zimbabwe, Nervous Conditions, 4 stars. Absolutely love this, like incredible. And then the DRC, Tram 83, 4 stars, and Ghana, Beautiful Things Are Not Yet Born. Okay, so I think in terms of if you are getting into like modern classics, I would categorize all of these as modern classics. I think Nervous Conditions is the most accessible in terms of its writing style, its structure. It's a very straightforward, I guess. It's the essential coming of age, and it is also a trilogy, so you're gonna be able to stay with Tambu for a really long time. But I just found Dangarumka's writing addictive, like incredibly addictive. I read this one the fastest of all of them, I think. The most difficult one to get into is definitely Tram 83. This does a lot of complicated things, a lot of patterns and motifs, and he plays a lot with the structure of the novel, which is phenomenal, although it does sometimes lead to doing a lot of acrobatics in your mind. For me, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born was the most depressing, I think, in terms of what is going on and the effect that what is going on has on everyone and everything. Because The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born is so much in itself like a novel about despair, about abjection, about corruption, decay. That is its theme. That's what it takes as its core. Very depressing, but like beautiful as well. I equate Amra's writing in here. Gorgeous. I think The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born probably has some of the most beautiful lines, I want to say, although for me this one was the one that took me the longest to get into the story before I started to kind of get on board with the writing style and like really fall into the story. So in terms of a favorite, how do I pick? I think in terms of the craft of the novel, Like, I was obsessed with what was going on in here. I thought this was a masterful study of corruption and greed and dread. But Nervous Conditions, there is just something so natural about it. Like, when I think of these two books, these two for me, I'm like, oh, plethora, a bounty to pick from to write really intense, I think, critical essays on it. Like, looking at it from an English lit perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, the symbolism and the themes and like what is going on, and everything is just very explicit. Whereas I just feel like in Nervous Conditions, it's so natural, it's not so overt, it's not flashy, and it really, really, truly feels like the author succeeded 100% into getting into the mind of her character and writing solely from that place. That's not the same goals that these two books have, but I just find it really impressive when a novel just feels so natural. It feels like the most natural, flowing, truthful thing in the world. And if there is symbolism, and if there are things to explore, and if there are literary nuggets to dig out, it doesn't feel like they were planted there on purpose, if that makes any kind of sense. It feels like it's just all already there. It's a world like that's already been created that the author is transcribing onto the page. I don't think I'm really making that much sense with this, but I just felt that Nervous Conditions was probably my favorite, I guess, my favorite in that respect. Seriously, so close. Couldn't really pick too much a favorite between all three of them. I think if you asked me on a different day, I would have completely different answers. If you have any countries or just book recommendations in general that you would like to have an around the world or world tour reading vlog feature, please comment them down below, because I'm always looking, I'm always searching. If you want to read around the world with us as well, I do host a book club on Fable. Free to download, free to join, it's in the description box. And for April, we're going to be reading from Japan. We're going to be reading The Housekeeper and The Professor. Very excited for that, but wow, I'm just so happy. Like, these were amazing. As well, like, what I would probably write an essay on is like digestion. Okay, I'm gonna stop blabbing, but I'm so happy with the way that this turned out. These were phenomenal, and thank you for watching, thank you for being here, thank you for reading around the world with me. Until my next one, that is when I will see you. I hope you're keeping so well. Ciao.
Take me to